is the Newcomers class. So how many of you are new to the Prescott area? So let's say, how many of you have been here a year? How many have been here 6 months or less?
Between
3 months or less? A month or less? Wow, that's pretty good. Okay, how many people are from Midwest?
originally or recently?
Well, moved recently. I'm sorry, I missed. Okay, how many from, anybody from the South? Ah, from the South. Okay, great. How many Californians? And I love Californians, don't be afraid. That's good. Yeah. How many, is there anybody from Alaska? Huh? Great. We might need some more chairs out just to help. So anybody from not the United States? Anybody from Europe? I'd be surprised, sometimes I get people from. So yeah, so Arizona is very, very different. Prescott itself is very unique when it comes to gardening here. If you've gardened other places and you've moved here and you've tried to garden, you kind of get that this is a very unique gardening area. We have a lot that is different. So we are, a lot of people go, what zone are we? You know, there's so many questions and so many things that are different. So I'm going to kind of give you a brief overview of it, and then we're going to leave a lot of time for question and answer, because I'm sure you've got a lot of questions that are kind of specific to your yard and your area, but we'll kind of leave a good amount of time for questions. So Prescott, there's people in Prescott, Prescott Valley, Broom Creek, Skull Valley, Dewey, Humboldt, all that area. So it's a broad area. Prescott itself is a zone, USDA zone 6B. So the government came up with the zones so we can all kind of have a common ground, a common language to speak from. So Prescott is a 6B zone. So what that means is, yes, we get freezing weather. We get sometimes below zero. Not very often, but it happens. We also get really hot weather. If you were here in June, we got really hot weather, didn't we? So we got above 100 and it stayed there for a while, which is unusual, but it happens. So it's kind of crazy. You can get below freezing and you can get above 100. That is a huge temperature swing. So that's unusual in and of itself. So we're a 6B. Prescott Valley, you're probably a 7. Some spots maybe an 8, which means you could grow a few different things. If you're up in Groom Creek, you're probably more like maybe a 5B to a 6, so you get even colder temperatures. So the lower the number, the colder it gets. So Flagstaff is about a 5, maybe a 4B to 5. Phoenix is like a 9 to a 10. If you're like downtown Phoenix where there's nothing but concrete, it's probably even higher. So the higher the number, the hotter. The lower the number, the colder it is. There's a lot of microclimates within any area. So you can have a microclimate if you've got a spot in your yard where you've got a lot of rock, whether it's natural rock, boulders, or you've brought in rock, and maybe you've got a rock retaining wall. and the sun hits it, and it's a southwestern exposure, you've created a little microclimate because it's going to be extra hot there, right? So you've got a really hot spot there. So you could probably maybe put a plant in there that maybe needs a little more warmth that you couldn't grow in a other spot in your yard. You've created a little microclimate. So when you look at any plant in the garden center, or most of them, 90%, will have a tag on it. And on that tag, it's going to tell you all kinds of information in it, and it'll give you a hardiness zone. So this is honeysuckle. It's saying zone 4 to 11. So it's going to grow here. We're a zone 6B and it's zone 4 to 11. Well, it's going to grow in Flagstaff. It's going to grow here, and it'll grow in Phoenix because it goes up to zone 11. So it goes down to -30. This is a tough plant. It can take a lot of stuff. So it's always good when you're looking at a plant, know the zone it's going to go into. That's very important. If a plant doesn't have a tag on it that's going to tell you its zone, ask a nursery person. Because the other thing that's really important to know, especially if you're coming from other places, is what kind of sun does it need? What is it like? Because the other thing about Arizona and Prescott is we don't have any humidity, right? You came here and the moisture gets sucked right out of your body, because especially if you're coming from California or the Gulf or Chicago, places like that where you have a lot of humidity, you can grow a lot of things right out in full sun and they're happy because they have all this level of humidity and life is good. And they come here and our sun is hot. We're at a mile high and we don't have any humidity. So what does that do to plants? Right, it fries them. The moisture just gets sucked right out of them. So some of those plants that you used to put in full sun, the yews, the hollies, the hibiscus, you can't put them in full sun here because they'll just shrivel right up. But unfortunately, a lot of the tagging that they do says, oh yeah, put it in full sun, it'll be happy. And so you take this wonderful little plant home and you put it in full sun because you're used to putting it in full sun, and it shrivels up and it gets sunburned, and you bring it back to me and you go, what happened? And I say, well, did you put it in full sun? You go, yeah, it said I could. And they said, well, you can't do that here. And you go, well, I didn't know. Well, so talk to people, talk to your nursery professionals and ask, can I put this plant in full sun? It says on the tag that I can. And we'll go, no, you can't. It's got to be in the shade. It needs full shade. It needs dark, full shade. So you need to ask the questions. Just because the tag says full sun, don't believe it. Prescott is different. Arizona is different. So you've got to ask questions. So a lot of the hollies, the yews, the hydrangeas, the gardenias, things like that, they're going to want some shade. Just because we are hot, hot sun. So you've got to ask questions. We try to do, especially here, we try to do signage to say, put in the shade. Give us some protection. We try to let people know what the plant needs. But if you're not sure, make sure you're asking questions on your plants. The other thing about Arizona. So how many of you have tried to dig a hole so far? Right, it's tough. It is, we don't have soil. We don't have topsoil. We don't have dirt. We have rocks. We have caliche. We have clay. So it is really a challenge to dig here. So, how do you think your plants feel being put in the soil? Restricted. It's tough. This environment here is challenging. So if you're gonna dig a hole and you take this little plant who's been he's been in a growing ground, first of all, where he's taken care of and he's loved and he's watered and he's trimmed and he's taken care of, and he comes to a garden center and he's loved and he's watered and he's taken care of, and then he comes to your house. And I'm gonna plant him in my yard. And you dig this little hole. It's the biggest hole you could dig. And it's about this big. And you go, okay. And you pull it out of the pot, shove it in this little hole. And you go, grow. And what do you think that little plant's gonna do? He's gonna struggle because he's been loved and taken care of, and then he goes into this yard and, oh my gosh, he tries to root out, but he hits that soil and he just goes, I can't do it. So we have to try to help them as much as possible, right? So we've got to take these plants that have been loved and taken care of, and we've got to love and take care of them. We've got to do everything possible to give them the best start, because we're putting them into an inhospitable situation. Because, I mean, we love Arizona because it's not humid. We can walk outside most of the time and not just, sweat to death. We love it because it's a mild four-season. There's a lot of things that we like about it, but it's a bit of a struggle for our plants that we're going to put in. So I'm going to pass this around. So this is a planting guide. So this is one of the things that we came up with to give your plants the best chance possible when you're planting them. And so, but this is for trees and shrubs and just about anything else that you're planting. So pretty much anytime you buy something here, tree, shrub, even perennials, we will attach this to your receipt. And we tell you, this is your planting guide. It doesn't have it here, but when you buy something, it also usually has a watering guide on it as well. And I know, because I know, a lot of people go, okay, but they don't read it. So I'm going to cover it with you really fast because I think it is so important. So first picture is how you should dig your hole. And I know a lot of you are going to laugh at me because you're like, dig a hole? Remember we just talked about that. You can't dig a hole. So that's where you pay somebody to dig it for you. When you dig your hole, a lot of people think, and I'm not sure where it came from, a lot of people go, I'm going to dig a hole in China. I'm going to dig that hole so deep that it'll be happy as can be. You don't need to dig a really deep hole. Here, you need to dig a wide hole. You need to work that soil up widthwise, not so much depthwise, but widthwise. So, we always say you want to dig it same depth as that container. So if I'm planting, I'll just grab this little guy. So this is about a 3-gallon pot. So if I'm digging a hole for this, I'm going to dig it this deep. Not really any deeper, especially here. So this depth, but I'm going to dig it 2.5 to 3 times as wide as this. So I'm going to work that soil up width-wise a lot more than depth-wise. Yes, ma'am.
And is that how your planters will all dig the hole if we
Yes.
purchase plants here?
Correct.
Because every other place I've ever been, I said, it's really supposed to be 2.5 to 3 times width. And they go, oh, no, this is what we do.
Right. And they're trying
And it's
to...
just the size of the container,
And they're doing that
basically.
because they're trying to save time.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay, so that's why I'm asking though, if we're paying for this service,
Yes.
we will get it done that way.
And if they don't do it that way, you're going to get on the phone, you're going to call me,
Okay,
and I'm going to have to talk to my planters.
okay,
But I will guarantee you they will dig it
okay,
width-wise.
sounds good.
Right. And so the nice little description there, it's bowl shaped, right? So it's going to be a nice bowl shape widthwise. So it doesn't have to be square, just nice bowl shape. And we're going to work that soil up widthwise. And the main reason we're doing it that way is because your roots are going to go this way. Roots don't go deep down, especially here, because our soils are so compacted and hard. They're going to go this way. So if you're working that soil up widthways, your roots are going to have plenty of room to start moving out. And that's what we want. We want those roots to move to the side because that's their natural tendency. But if you don't work that soil up and loosen it up, those roots aren't going to have anywhere to go. They're going to hit the side and they're going to stop. Guess that does to your plant. Your plant's going to stop. Your plant's not going to grow very fast because its roots are going to hit the side and just kind of stop there because they're not going to, they're going to have to work really, really hard to keep going, to get through that hard, packed soil that we have. So that hole digging is time consuming. If you, like you said, if you dug in the soil, you get it. It's time consuming. Sometimes it's worth it, depending upon the time of year, to go out and run the hose in that area for a while and let the moisture soak in so you can dig. But it's really important to get that soil loosened up for that plant, that tree, that shrub. We also recommend, you'll see in there, so the second hole, this is really important for if you're going to be planting a pine, a spruce, anything that doesn't like to be overly wet all the time, do a perk test. So you've dug your hole, run the water in it, and see how fast it drains out. Because a lot of Yavapai Hills, places at Chino, you can have a layer of caliche underneath that you don't see. So caliche is that, you ever look on the hillsides and you see that layer of white going through? That's caliche, and it's like concrete. And it will prevent the hole from draining sometimes. So run the water in it. If it doesn't drain within 24 hours, you got a bad hole. You are not going to want to put a spruce tree or a pine tree in that hole because essentially you have a bathtub and you have a hole that's going to always have moisture in there. Those trees do not like that. They're going to be very, very unhappy in that hole.
You said 24 hours in the literature indicates 12.
12, 24, anywhere within that. I would, yeah, 12 works too. You can sometimes get past that by putting like a chimney run in there, punching through like with the digging bar and punching past that layer of caliche. If it's not really thick, you can punch past it. That's definitely worth trying if you're determined to have a tree in that spot. You can punch a chimney through, so it's worth trying. But seriously, folks, if you cannot get that hole to drain, it's not worth your aggravation to try to put a tree in there. It's really not. If you do it and it drains, but it drains slowly, but you still want to put something in there, my next suggestion would be to you, don't plant that tree in a well, mound it up mound that area up and plant that tree up on the mound. Gives you a little bit more room for drainage, and it also allows, when we go through a monsoon season, that moisture, that rain is going to run off of it and not pool there. So that, and it also works if you have heavy clay soils. It's very important that you mound up when you plant, because it allows the moisture to run off and not pool. So that's very important. So when you've dug your hole, you've done your perk test, you're ready to plant, mixing mulch in there. Now, this can be a little, you'll hear different thoughts on this. Some places will tell you, you don't need to mix mulch in your soil. Just plant that sucker right in there. We disagree with that, because if you look at our soils, do you see much going on in our soils? You know, if you live back east where you have a lot of organic going on in your soil, California, when you have a lot of more organic, more material, I would maybe agree with that. But we just don't have a lot organically going on in our soil. That's the truth. We don't. So we always recommend that you add some mulch, some organic material into that soil. That's going to help feed the roots of your tree. It's going to lighten your soil. It's just better for the tree. We're not saying put it all mulch. We're saying mix a third mulch to 2/3 native soil. So that dirt that you took out of the hole, get the rocks out of there, because I guarantee you there's rocks in there. Take those big rocks out. So you're going to mix a third mulch. So this is our mulch. This is all composted green goods. We don't put any sludge in ours. Some places put sludge in, which is like really gross stuff you don't want with your trees. You don't want to be touching it. This is all composted green goods. This is what it is in ours. It's finely ground. It's a great product. So you're going to mix a third of this in with 2/3 of your native soil. Mix it up real good. Then you're going to backfill with it. If you don't use all your mulch, that's fine, because you can use the rest of it when you're done planting everything in. You can top dress with it. Top dressing is great because it does a couple of things. It helps keeps the weeds out of that area, and it also cools the soil down, especially in the summer when it's just baking. You can put the mulch on there, and it keeps that soil a little bit cooler. It also helps with you don't have to water as frequently, because it'll help keep the soil moist. That's going to probably fall over. So using the mulch, we recommend it. I know not every place does, but we do recommend it. So the next thing on there is scoring the root ball. I always call it tickling the root ball. And this is the same whether you're planting a tree, whether you're planting a shrub, or even a little perennial. So I'm going to show you on this, even though it's not a tree. So I know I think that says take a knife or something. I don't think it matters so much, but it's loosening the root ball. So anytime you pull a tree or shrub out of a bucket, those roots are going to kind of be wound up in there. You need to loosen them up. And the reason you loosen them up is because you want those roots to start going out. If you don't loosen them, they're going to kind of keep doing that. But you want to loosen it so that they start going out. So if you do it on a big tree, you might need a knife because the roots are a lot bigger. Or sometimes I'll just take a big stick and just run it through it. Don't be afraid. I know some people get really freaked out, like, oh, I can't do that. I'll hurt it. You're not going to hurt it. It's a benefit to do it. Do it on the bottom. Do it on the sides. Just loosen it up. You want those roots to start feeling free to start growing out. So don't be afraid to do that. A lot of people feel like they're going to be hurting it. You're not. So once you've loosened that all up in there, now you're ready to get that root ball back into that hole. The other thing that's really, really important here, and I think it's a mistake I find a lot, is people are planting deep. So almost on all your, especially on trees, especially trees that are grafted, they're planting things deep. So I'll show you on this. So wherever something is in the bucket, wherever that soil level is in the bucket, you need to either plant that level with your soil, or if we're going to plant up on a mound, just make sure you're not burying where that's meeting the ground. A lot of people plant things deep and they're burying the bottom part of the plant. So they're planting it so deep that the plant isn't able to pull up oxygen. And they're actually can lead to disease because they're burying that part so deep in there that you get a lot of fungal issues and rot because they're keeping it too moist. So you can, I see it over and over again where people have planted things so deep that they're rotting it off. So like on this, see where it's meeting, the little branches are coming out. If you plant that so deep that you're planting it past where the branches are coming out, you're going to end up rotting that whole thing. So if you plant it so deep that you're planting it past where that little knot is, right into here, see if I planted it past that, put dirt up past that, you're going to end up rotting it. So you got to make sure wherever that soil level is in the pot, you want that even with where you're planting it in the ground. If you have really heavy clay soils, be extra, extra cautious that you're not planting deep. Especially important on fruit trees, trees that are grafted, like your maple trees, especially important on aspen trees. Make sure you're not planting deep. Spruce trees, things like that. I've seen them planted deep, and they might last a year or two, but eventually they will die. I've seen it happen a lot. So watch that. He also talks in here about putting a plant food in there to start with. We have our plant food, 744. We love this food because it is a slow release food. It is not going to burn. So if you're going to use a different one, that's fine. Make sure you're not using something that is quick release, because a quick release food is going to burn your plant, because those fine little root hairs need something easy, something that's not going to dump a lot of food on them at once, because you'll burn them off. And then also trees, your bigger trees, whether it be a spruce tree, deciduous tree like the maples or one of those, we do recommend you stake, especially here, because the wind can blow, right? If you guys haven't been here in the spring, some of you newer people, the wind will blow. And if you see trees that are like this in your neighborhood, it's because we have a lot of prevailing wind, and the people didn't stake their trees. So we recommend at least a year. Keep those stakes on there for a year. If you're in a particularly windy spot, Yavapai Hills, Chino Valley, you may want to do it for 2 years. But after that, you will want to take them off. And when you stake your trees, you want 2 stakes, one on each side. You do want to have a little bit of give on that trunk because you want that trunk to learn to be strong. Because if you tie something right up to it, the trunk never has to learn to be strong, right? Because it's already got something tied to it, so the minute you take it off, the trunk's like, whoa, what happened to my support? You never learned to be strong. So you want to, we have the V-straps we use, so it's not right up next to it, but it gives it enough of a support that it's not going to blow over one way or the other, but it's learned to be strong on its own. Very important that you do that. So that's planting, and it doesn't matter whether you're planting, like I said, a tree, a shrub, a perennial, an annual. You planting and amending the soils here is so important, and you really can't chintz on it or skip a step or just think, I'm just going to dig a quick hole and I'll throw something into it, because you're not in Kansas anymore, Toto. You're in Prescott, Arizona, and it is different here. And if you want things to survive and look good, you have to go a little extra step. So the second thing that is so different here that I see people make mistakes on, and I get it, is the watering. Because it is different here. And it's one of those things that once you get it correct, it becomes easy. But I understand the challenges of watering here. You know, I find that either people grossly overwater and they drown everything with kindness, or they grossly underwater because they don't understand how important, especially the first year, watering can be, because they moved from a spot where they probably really didn't need to water a whole lot. So watering is a bugaboo, and I get that. So we used to have a gal that worked for us. Her name was Patty Conrad. Patty passed away a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. Patty was amazing. I love Patty. She put together a sheet called Garden Talk Watering Wisely, because I think she finally got frustrated one day. Just said, I'm going to put together a sheet. So this is a really good, comprehensive sheet on watering. And it kind of goes through how you water a tree differently than you're going to water a shrub, differently than you're going to water a perennial, than your lawn or an annual. And it also kind of covers our soil types. So some of you have really heavy clay soils. Some of you have really sandy or loamy soil. And that's going to make a difference in how you water. And quite honestly, some of you in your same yard, 2 feet away, will have clay and then sand. I've seen it. In Prescott Valley, part of our yard was heavy clay. The other part of our yard was sand. And we had to water differently on both parts of our yard. And is it a challenge when you have a drip system? Yes, it is. And sometimes, quite frankly, you may have to abandon your drip system or modify your drip system. And I know that irritates some of you, and I get it. But you have to adjust. You know, you cannot. It's not a one-size-shoe-fits-all. Ladies, you get this. You've seen the one-size-fits-all. Yeah, right. It doesn't always work. So watering, especially the first year, is just so important. And the other thing to understand is different plants have different needs. So this manzanita, so this is very, very similar to our native manzanita. He doesn't like a lot of water. So he has a very, very, very different need than this honeysuckle. So if I plant this and I put it on my drip system, well, and I put this in my drip system, one of these plants isn't going to be real happy because they have very, very different needs. This one doesn't want much water at all. This one is going to want a lot of water to begin with, especially. So if I have them both on the same drip, what am I going to do? Right? It's a challenge. So you've got to figure out who's going to be happy and who's not, or maybe you're going to hand water one and put the other one on the drip. But what you can't do is treat them all the same. And the other thing you can't do is treat a brand new plant you've planted the same as existing plant that's been in your yard for 5 or 6 years. You can't treat them the same. So a brand new plant, so our rule of thumb, brand new plant, put it in the yard, you're going to want to water it at least twice a week first growing season. And the amount of water you're going to give it, we kind of judge it by its gallon size. So this is a 1 gallon plant. So we would say it's going to want twice a week watering, at least a gallon every time you water it. Now if it's summer and it's June, I would tell you it probably is going to want some more than twice a week, especially the first week you plant it. I would probably say water it 3 times a week and keep an eye on it. If it's wilty, it may want another watering. It'll talk to you. But the mistake that people make, especially on a drip system, is they give it lots of little watering. So they'll run out and they throw a half a cup of water on it and they go, I watered it. Aren't you proud of me? I watered it. Well, how far down does a half a cup of water go? Not very far. So yeah, you watered it. But did you water the entire thing? No. So you've got to make sure when you water your plant, you're watering that entire root ball. So that's why we say give it a gallon of water, because you're putting a whole gallon of water on there, you're probably saturating that entire root ball. And that's the most important thing to think about when you water. You've got to make sure that you're saturating that entire root ball, that it's going deep enough to water the whole thing. So if I went out and I watered this, but I only gave it half a gallon of water, am I watering the entire thing? So I got to make sure I'm giving it at least 3 gallons of water. Otherwise, I'm not going deep enough, and I'm not probably going wide enough. So I'm not giving enough water to that entire area. And the other thing is, when you water, especially when you plant here, and say you're planting the end of May, and it hasn't really rained a lot yet, and I go out and I water, that water is also being sucked away by the other soil, because that soil is dry and it's going, ooh, water. And it's taking that water away from the root ball as well. So you got to make sure, especially on a new planting, that you're watering enough to water that entire root ball, and you're watering enough so that if the existing soil takes that water and sucks it away, that it's still going to have enough water for the root ball. So when you water a new planting, be very, very conscious of the fact that you've got to put enough water on there to give it all that it needs. Enough for the water width-wise and enough for the water depth-wise. But not so much water all the time that you're not giving it enough time in between to catch a breath. So the other mistake people make is, oh, I got water. I'm in Arizona. Everything needs water. Lots and lots and lots of water. I'm going to go out every day and I'm going to water it. And I get it. But it also needs to breathe. So they need to have a space in between to breathe. Plants need oxygen too. So there, in the soil, there's a space for water, there's a space for oxygen. And if we fill all that space up with water all the time, you're not going to get a chance to breathe. So you need not an everyday watering, especially for your trees and shrubs. Yes? Okay, so we always kind of go by growing seasons. So growing season would be from March through the end of November. So if you planted it in April, you would do that twice a week watering up until the end of November. Okay? So that would be your first growing season. Then we go on what we call a winter watering schedule. So winter watering would be December, January, and February. So winter watering, this is another thing that's probably very different from where a lot of you came from. Winter watering, we recommend a twice a month watering. Probably a lot of you did not water in the winter at all. We recommend it especially for your new plants and shrubs, twice a month watering. We can be very, very dry here in the winter. I have been here in winter when we have had no rain at all and very little snow. So it's very important that you winter water. If you shut your system down, which I totally get, if you're watering on a drip irrigation, you shut it down, go out with a hose. Pick a nice day. We have beautiful days here in the winter. Hook up a hose, water, unhook your hose, and you're done. If you don't want to do that, take the bucket out. Do something. You need to winter water. If you don't winter water, what happens come spring is things start to leaf out, and it didn't leaf all the way to the top. And you'll be calling me going, my tree or my shrub, it just didn't leaf all the way out to the top. What happened? And I'll go, did you winter water? No. And I go, well, your root system just didn't have enough oomph. And so you got winter dieback. That's what we call it, winter dieback. So it's very important that you do that. And even on your established things, you really do need to water. If we get a really good storm, you can skip a watering. If we get a really good snow, maybe you can skip a watering. It takes 6 inches of snow to equal an inch of moisture. So those snows don't have as much water as you think they do. So that would be your first season, and then your second season would start in March. Then you can go to a once a week watering. When you go to a once a week watering, you need to increase the amount of water you give, but you don't have to water as frequently. So instead of twice a week, it's once a week, but increase the amount. So instead of 3 gallons of water, you're given 6 to 10 gallons of water. So you're increasing the amount because that root ball is going to be bigger, right? Your shrub's going to be bigger, your root ball is going to be bigger, you need to give it more water, but you don't have to give it as frequent. Now, if it's June and it's 100 degrees and it's been 100 degrees for a week, give it an extra watering. It's okay. But the thing that irritates me the most is, and I know sometimes you can't help it because you got other people running your irrigation clocks and all that, is the irrigation clocks get set up, they're running every other day for 20 minutes. That is the wrong way to water your plants. And I know that's how some people set up your clocks, and I get it. You're going to have to fight with the people who are setting up your clocks and go, nope, this is how I want them set up. And the other thing to know is, what are the emitters on your plants? We need to know the size of the emitters on your plants. Is it a half-gallon emitter? Is it a gallon emitter? Is it a 2-gallon emitter? How many emitters are on your plants? Is it do you have one 1 gallon emitter? Do you have 5 1 gallon emitters? I mean, these are things you need to know so that you can water properly. Because if you don't know, you can't take care of your plants right. Because you don't know. You know, if you've got a 20-foot aspen out there and you don't know what your emitters are on there, you can't possibly know if you're taking good care of that tree right. You can't. You're going to call me and you're going to ask, am I watering right? And I'm going to go, well, how often does your system run? You go, 3 times a week. And I'm going to go, well, how long? Well, I don't know. And I'm going to go, well, do you know what your emitters are on? I don't know. And I'm going to say, do you know how many emitters do you have on there? Oh, gosh, I don't know. And I'm going to, and I'm going to say, well, I can't really help you because you don't know enough. So if you have somebody else doing your yard work, ask them. And if they say, I don't know, go, well, let's go find out. Go out there with them. And go, well, let's go investigate this, shall we? And because you, as the homeowner, need to take control of that. Don't let them tell you what they think it needs. You tell them what you know it needs. Okay? So proper watering here is tough, and I get it. But you got to be smart and take advantage of what you know is right. That sheet I gave you has some really, really good information on it. And she gave you some really good suggestions to figure out how to water your plants. She talks about using, run your system for 30 minutes, go out with a screwdriver and see how far that water went down. You know, some of it is you guys having to be proactive and to go out into your yard and see how the watering is doing out there. Because we can't always tell you if it's enough or not enough. You need to kind of go out in the yard and do that yourselves as well. Yes?
So does this discussion that we're having now mean that you might need to change the size of the emitters and the amount of emitters as your landscape
Ooh,
develops
definitely.
and grows?
I can't tell you how many yards I've been into that has a big tree on it that has a 1 gallon emitter right next to the trunk of the tree.
And it should also go out to the
Yeah.
root line, so
Right.
we moved out.
So as your tree or your shrub grows, you need to move that emitter out. You may need to add emitters. You need as your landscape grows, your drip system needs to grow and change with it. There may be some things you need to take off your drip system.
Right.
You know, Russian sage. How many of you have Russian sage in your yard right now? So if you've had Russian sage in your yard more than a year, it doesn't need an emitter. You do not need to have it on your drip system. It needs it for a year and then cut it off. So there may be some things in your yard. Arizona cypress. They really, if they're more than 3-4 years old, you may not need to have them on a drip system. So you need to always kind of reevaluate your yard and make decisions. Do I need to move the emitters out? Do I need to add emitters? Do I need to take things off the emitter? Patchy plume. It's another native. It doesn't need to be on an emitter if you've had it in the yard a couple of years or more. So you can always reevaluate your drip systems and your yard and see what needs it, what doesn't. So that's very, very important. Yes, ma'am.
When you're watering, okay, and let's say you've got some trees and then shrubs, how do you know how much to water, let's say a tree? I mean, the shrubs are probably okay, but how much do you give a tree? You know, it's only a year old, say.
What I would do, it kind of depends how much time you have. I like to kind of deep soak things. So I usually go out with my hose and just kind of a little more than a trickle, but I will put it on for one side for like an hour, and then I'll put it on the other side of the tree for about an hour. That way, and then don't put it up right next to the trunk. Put it out kind of where the drip line would be. So the drip line of a tree is where the branching of that tree ends. And I usually just put it just inside that, and then just let it run for a while. And then if ever you see water just running off, not penetrating, then it's time to shut it down. But just let it kind of run for an hour or so, soak it in, move it to the other side, and let it run for a while. Let it soak in. Did that answer the question? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so watering, I get it, it's a challenge. You've got to be reevaluating it all the time as your landscape grows. But very, very, very important on your new plants to get it right. Pay attention to your soil types, because that's going to make a difference. Yes?
So should you not plant like in October, November then?
Oh no, great time to plant.
Okay.
Yeah, we're moving. Fall is a wonderful time to plant because the soils are still warm, but they're also fairly moist from the monsoons. It's less stressful on the trees. So fall is a great time.
So what's the latest you should probably plant then here?
Actually, here you can plant, as long as you can dig in the soil, you can plant. And we don't get the permafrost here. So for trees and shrubs, you can plant pretty much any time. If you get into some of your perennials, a little more tender type perennial, the sooner you can get them in, the more they can root out before winter. So, I would say get them in ASAP. But Arizona cypress, some of this stuff, it doesn't care. Doesn't really matter. Yes?
Where do you buy emitters?
We have emitters here, up to, I think, a 2-gallon, and then we have an adjustable emitter as well. So we do have them, but other places have them. So if you have a landscaper or somebody who works on your yard, don't let them bully you around. You can be the expert on your yard. Tell them what you want in your yard. Okay, so we're going to move quickly through some other things. If you have more questions about watering, excuse me. If you have more questions about watering later, you can ask me questions later or talk to one of us. I know Ken does a irrigation class, and I think it's also on our YouTube channel, the Waters Garden Center YouTube channel. There's a whole irrigation class on there too. So we're going to touch on just a few other things real quick. Like I said, there's a lot to cover in this class. So a couple other quick things. So our soil, also we're very alkaline. So some of you may be from areas where it was very acidic and you were probably fighting acidity all the time. So you were throwing things like lime and all that kind of stuff into your soils. We are very alkaline and our water is alkaline. So we're always trying to make things more acidic, kind of the opposite. So we put in things like soil sulfur. So this helps things become our soil more acidic. This is a once a year product you can put in. Helps bring down that alkalinity. Very, very helpful, especially if you have things like the maples or things that you're trying to bring color out into. Sulfur definitely helps with that. Helps with your coloring on things. Your hydrangeas, that kind of stuff as well. Soil sulfur, very, very important. Also, the mulch helps make things more acidic. The plant food, this is our plant food that we put together. It's 744 all natural, nothing synthetic in it. It has the guano. It is, I always call it earthy. Smells earthy. Stinks is what it does. But it is a great food. Wonderful, wonderful. We're moving fall. If you haven't fed your yard, or the last time you fed it was like May, fall is a great time to feed your yard. Because what you're gonna do is you're gonna plump up those roots as it goes through winter. It's gonna make that tree a lot healthier as it goes through winter. And then when it wakes up in the spring, it's gonna have all this stored food. It's gonna wake up, it's gonna sing, it's gonna be happy, it's gonna be green. So fall feeding is excellent. It also has some iron in it, some sulfur in it, cottonseed meal, guano. It's a great food. It does have an odor, so wear gloves when you're putting it out. But wonderful food. So it also helps combat our alkalinity. It's just something you constantly have to work on here. But do not use lime. Do not put your fireplace ashes into your soil. We're just always fighting that.
When do you use the sulfur? You said once a year.
It doesn't really matter, just, whenever, I like to use it in the spring, but it really doesn't matter, just kind of use it once a year. So whenever I always tell people put it on your calendar so you just remember to do it once a year. So plant protectors, those of you who have the ponderosa pines or the pinyon pines in your yard, if you are fighting the scale, the bark beetle, if you fight tip borer, if you have the cypress, the Lilani cypress or Arizona cypress, and you get tip borer. This product is wonderful for that. So this is a systemic insecticide. So this again is a once a year application. Also works really well as a preventative. So this you mix up and you pour around the base of the tree. Excellent for the scale and the beetle. If you worry about that in your yard or you have battled that in your trees, it works very well, and I like it because it's easy to apply. You're not trying to spray these trees or climb up on a ladder, any of that kind of stuff. So you use it by measuring the tree at about chest height, and you use about 1 ounce per inch of tree circumference. Diameter? I always get those two mixed up. Circumference. Thank you. I always get them wrong. So, people kind of go, that's a lot of product sometimes. I got a lot of trees. Well, it's true, but how much are your trees worth to you on your property? I mean, some of your trees are worth a lot to you, right? So it's just very easy to apply and very worthwhile. And also while I'm thinking about it, I just happen to see this. If you want to put your email down, they will send you, if you want to, you don't have to, they will send you, on here also, so this is our preferred plant guide. So on here, this is a list Ken put together. So it's like if you're looking for trees that are showy in the fall, or trees that are flowering, or flowering shrubs, or living screens. There's like, 10 or 15 different categories of different trees that are proven in this area. They will mail this out to you if you want to put your email down. You don't have to, but you can if you want. I'll start here. If we have you already, that's fine. Pass it on to the next person. Couple of other things real quick, then I'll leave it open for questions. This is one product I didn't mention when you're planting. This is the root and grow. This is when you're planting new things, trees, shrubs, flowers, perennials. This also has a rooting hormone in it, so it helps trees and shrubs create those really fine little root hairs, which are the ones that you want, because those are the ones that grab the food and the water and all that good stuff. So it helps create new roots, the root hairs. And it also has a bit of that transplant shock hormone that calms them down, makes them want to be happy. So anytime you do new plantings, this is a really good product to use. A lot of people think, oh, I only use this once. No, you can use this for quite a while. So you can use it the first time you plant and you're watering, but continue to use it. Or if you have a plant that you think is just kind of struggling, it's kind of stressed out, go ahead and use this product again. It really is a good product because it encourages those new roots to go out. So if you've got one struggling, this is a great one to use as well. I forgot to mention that when we were talking about planting.
So if if our plants are being planted by your nursery,
They use this.
so we don't have to buy extra
Yeah,
for the plants that they're planting?
they will use this when they're planting,
Okay.
but if you want to buy
But for
some to
anything
use
else
later,
or
you
ongoing,
could.
right,
Yeah.
okay.
Definitely. So our time's almost up, but so on our website, marsgardencenter.com, on one of the tabs, it says garden,
Tips.
or it says learn.
Tips.
I think it says learn there.
Oh, does it?
But then if you click on it and it says garden tips, it is a wealth of resources. So a lot of people come here and they go, are there any books on this area? And a lot of people are familiar with the Western Garden Book, which is a great book, not knocking it. The only thing I don't like about it is their zones are different. They don't use the USDA zone, they do like their own zone thing, which kind of messes everybody up. But Ken put a bunch of resources together, kind of specific to this area. So one of the biggest boogie-boos that I think people deal with are javelina. How many of you have been introduced to javelina? Right? Sometimes you're like, oh, people go, oh, they're so cute. Until they ravage your yard. And they're not so cute anymore, right? So here's a tip sheet on javelinas. What to plant, what not to plant. We do need, I told Kim, we got to go through this winter and kind of make some adjustments on it because they're kind of eating things that they never used to eat. And I think some of that is because there's the things that they didn't used to eat, they're eating because those are the things that are out there now. So they're adjusting their diet. So we need to adjust this a little bit. Plus we got some tips on some new repellents we're gonna try. But a good sheet, good sheet. Deer and rabbit. So a lot of you also have javelina, also have deer and rabbit. So there's a good sheet on deer and rabbit repellent plants. Vegetable calendar. So this one, if you're into veggies, tells you how to prep your beds, but it also tells you the different times of year of when to plant those vegetables. So we've kind of moved past our summer one, but we're moving into the fall crops, which would be your cabbages, kales, broccoli, cauliflower. So we're moving into that fall season of planting. So that's a good one. This one is his Garden Talks calendar, especially if you're new to the area. So this one talks about month by month what you should be doing out in your yard. So we are in September. So a lot of people don't do grasses anymore, but if you want to put a lawn in, it's a good time to start thinking about your lawn, or if you need to reseed, thinking about your plant food. If you're going to be splitting your perennials, it's a good time to split your perennials. So he just kind of goes through month by month what you need to think about doing out in your yard, so that's a good resource. But he probably has, 50 or 60 different garden tip things. So watersgardencenter.com, it's a lot of resources on there. Yes, ma'am.
Anything about how to control locusts?
There is a sheet on locusts on there, but there's no way to control it.
There's no way to protect your plants against
They don't need them.
Not the locust, actually, the big locusts that make the big noise up in the tree, they really aren't eating. They actually don't have a mouth part.
But there's something that looks like a big grasshopper that's eating.
It's probably a grasshopper.
It's very small.
Yeah. It's the grasshoppers right now are out of control in certain areas. Yeah, I've gotten a lot of calls, and they're voracious. I mean, they're eating a lot of things. So this is the multi-purpose spray. It's a permethrin spray. It's not organic, but sometimes you have to choose between organic or save my shrubs. The Nolo bait, a lot of people like to put the Nolo bait out, which is a beneficial control, or more of an organic control. But at this point in the season, Nolo bait's not going to be effective because it's just too late. The Nolo bait is they eat it, they stop digesting, and they basically die off. But it's so late in the season, and they're so big, some of the grasshoppers, that there's not enough time for it to be effective. So you have to pull out the bigger guns.
Well, I used that on the plants I saw they were chewing, and they don't seem to be chewing on them anymore, but it doesn't kill the grasshopper.
Did you spray the grasshoppers?
Yeah, I did, right?
Okay.
Dab, around.
Okay.
I didn't get in.
We've got to take a bigger step up. Yeah, there's a product called 38, which is a little more intense. And you spray with that. When they get that big and that hard shell that they have, yeah, sometimes you just have to be meaner and more intense. But yeah, the grasshoppers are bad right now, so it's tough. Yes?
What do you do with succulents here? Can they be outside in the winter?
Well,
Something?
it depends on the succulent. So there are some succulents that are winter hardy, and they will be absolutely fine. There are some succulents, depending on the variety, that will not take it at all.
So just see what happens.
Yeah. So without knowing the variety, I couldn't tell you.
It's one of those that was pre-planted. But
My guess is if it was a pre-planted one, I would venture to say there's ones in it that are not going to be winter hardy.
What about a Christmas
Put it
cactus
underneath, like
Christmas cactus has to be brought inside.
and desert rose as well?
Inside.
prickly pears.
Say again?
Prickly pears.
Most of your prickly pears are going to be fine. Yes, sir.
How do Japanese maples do up here?
So Japanese maples are one of those plants that will live up here, but they need shade, and they need to be out of the wind. So if you can find that environment for it, it'll be very happy.
Otherwise, good luck.
Yeah. So I have one that I grow in a pot because I don't have really a spot in my yard that'll take it, but I have a great spot on my patio. So I grow it in a container, so it's out of the wind and it's in a shady spot, and it does fabulous. But they hate the wind. They can take some dappled light on them, or early morning sun, late afternoon. So they do good under trees, under bigger trees, they'll do fine. But you got to give them the right environment. The cold, they're fine. Yes?
Is this the time of year you're putting down for weed and grasshopper?
So weed and grass stopper, good question. So, those of you that hate weeds, so the weed and grass stopper, so there's a couple different ways it comes. You can get Surflan, which is a liquid one you spray. We kind of stopped carrying that one because it was complicated to apply, plus it was orange, and too many people were turning their patios orange. So we went with the granular one. So this one, it's not too late. You could put it down, but I would venture to guess most of your weeds have already germinated. So the weeds here come in two different crops. There's cool season weeds and there's warm season weeds. So the cool season weeds usually come about February, somewhere in there, February, March. Warm season weeds come up July, August, just after the monsoons. So we sell this product, it's a granular product. I always say this is another one you can mark on your calendar. Put it down twice a year. Do it end of January, do it at the end of June, and you will combat 90% of your weeds. So what this does is it prevents your weeds from being able to germinate. So weeds put out a little tiny taproot just before they're gonna, that's their germination. This burns that little tiny taproot off. So if you put it down at the end of June, it's gonna prevent those summer weeds from coming. So if you put it down just before monsoon season, you prevent that whole amazing crop of summer weeds. If you put it at the end of January, it prevents the winter weeds, which are like the foxtail, which are the nasty ones the poor dogs get into. So if you do it twice a year, you can really, really, really keep a lot of your weeds down. So it's a great product to use.
And what's the name of that again?
High yield, ornamental weed and grass stopper.
And how much would that cover?
Not organic.
How much land would that cover?
This covers 5,000 square feet. There is an organic one. It's corn maze, and it does work. It's very specific. You've got to get the timing just right on it, but it does work. And I do have it down there in like a hose-end sprayer loan, but the timing is super important with it. But this one, the trick with these, you put it down, it's granular. You can either wait for a storm, did you time you right on the storm, that waters it in. If you don't get a storm, you've got to go back and water it in yourself because it needs to be worked into that first few inches of soil to be effective. Because if it's just laying on top, not going to do you any good. It's got to be watered in, either by you or you get your timing right and the storm waters it in. Yes, sir.
I had a question about coming into the freeze temperature, how to protect the outdoor plants. When it gets down to be cold, 32 degrees,
Yeah.
how do you protect your like berry bushes and stuff from?
Most of your berry bushes are fine with that temperature. So your blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, apple trees, they're all fine with that freezing temperature. Most of your things do not need a winter protection. Even the roses here are fine. Fig tree might want to protect a fig tree. Everything else should be fine. Yes?
That pincushion plant, will that grow in a container?
Oh yeah.
Well, I
keeping it in
managed, I managed to not be successful with those.
Maybe you're keeping it too wet?
Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a little pincushion flower, great for butterflies. Should grow in a container just fine, unless it's staying too wet.
Not even too generous.
And that's, I forgot to mention that here when we were talking about digging holes. Growing things in containers, you can grow a lot of things in containers. If you're too frustrated digging holes, try containers. I have probably 50 containers in my yard, and I grow everything from fruit trees, Japanese maples. I grow a lot of things in containers because I can control them a lot better. I can control the soil, the water. I find it very, very easy. So I love growing in containers. You do have to watch your container that you're growing in. Especially here with the freezing temperatures, make sure it's a good heavy container, not one of these cheesy, gonna fall apart containers.
With regard to the weeds and grass or grass killer, what if they've already germinated and you've got them like 2 feet, 3 feet high?
Then you got a whole other problem.
I mean, even if you cut them back, what happens?
So if your weeds have already germinated and you've already got them going, then you've got to make other decisions. You're either going to pull them or you look at a weed killer. So there are some organic weed killers, burnout. We've had pretty good success with burnout. It's an organic weed killer. And then there's Killzall, there's Weed Beater Ultra. There's some other weed killers you can use. And it kind of depends on the weeds and what they're in or around as to what you'd want to use. And that's just talking with somebody. Depends on the time of year too. If it's cooler season, the Weed Beater Ultra works really well in the cooler temperatures. If it's warmer, you can use a different one. If it's really woody stemmed, heavy stem stuff, you want to use more of a brush killer. So you just need to talk with someone.
Will the weeds die during the winter then?
They usually die off. But usually they're dropping seed matter, so you get more of a problem next year. So yeah, they get hurt.
Is there a resource for plant care, like an online resource or an extension service here that has information like about how to take care of your Russian sage or the little California poppies, like when to cut them back?
So yeah, there again, our watersgardencenter.com. Our YouTube channel. Ken has a really amusing video on cutting back your Russian sage. And then there is a extension office, the Yavapai County Extension Office. They're by the fairgrounds. And then we also have their number listed on, we have a referral guide in the store and the number's listed on that as well. Yes, ma'am.
I have some really invasive vinca that was planted before. And what is the best way to get rid of that? I've just been told it's very hard to kill and it keeps coming back.
Yanking it out of the ground is a good way.
Okay, but I guess I'm assuming that even yanking it out of the ground isn't good enough.
Probably the other one would be the brush killer.
Brush killer?
Yeah. Okay, it's not organic, but it is a good, because vinca has that kind of waxy leaf to it, you got to use kind of a heavier duty weed killer, and the brush killer works good on it.
And then is there a time that you should wait before planting anything else if you use something like that?
With the brush killer, it might give you a time, but it's not, it doesn't sterilize the soil. It only works on the green part of the plant, moves into the root system. It doesn't translocate in the soil.
Okay.
Not really.
Okay.
Okay, you guys have been great. If you have any other questions,
Thank you.